Welcome to Artistic Adventures, and we're doing another video in our Hocus Pocus project today. This is part 4. We're working on Witch Mary, and thumbnail here says hair and face. We're also going to do a little work on her body too to chunk her up a bit. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to curl this doll's hair. I ended up deciding not to do a wig for this doll. I'm just going to use the hair that she has because she has black hair with like a pink streak in it, and Mary has black hair with a sort of purple streak in it. So what I'm going to do is take this, it's a used doll, with hair that's all messed up. So what we're going to do is the method where you dip it in boiling water to give the hair a new look. You can do this to either straighten hair or curl hair. And what we're going to do is use it to curl the hair so that we can do that sort of odd updo that Mary has. I'm going to do this part of it in this video where I make the hair curly, but I'm not going to do the final hair look until after I do the costume because it's going to require some maneuvering, and I don't want to get it working and then mess it up by, flipping her around doing the costume. So what I'm doing is taking these metal dowel pieces. I just cut them off with some kitchen shears, rolling the hair around it, taking little small sections. And then I'm going to take a long pin, a little bit longer than a normal dressmaking pin. And I'm putting it through the hair right up against the wood. Not through the wood, but right up against it and pinning it right into the head. That'll keep it from coming undone. So there's our curl. There's a variety of ways to do this. Some people use straws. Some people use different things. But I'm going to use the dowels because I don't want to worry about the heat of the hot water, the boiling water. You have to use boiling water too. I don't want to, melt anything into her hair or anything. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it's repetitive, just taking more small sections and going around, no particular way, just curling it, mostly I guess back. If the ends are a little bit ragged, I'm cutting them just so that I can get the curl to go under and make a curl instead of having, like a piece that's sticking out or whatever. So this video ended up being, it's about 42 minutes long. I really shocked myself last week by being able to talk for over an hour on a video. And I think I didn't make any mistakes where I had to go back and piece the audio together. I was pretty shocked. Wow, I guess I can just talk and talk and talk about just about anything. Anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying this series because I am. I really was happy with how Sarah turned out. And, we did a few different techniques. And this is another one. I don't think I've done a video about this. I've done it myself. I don't think I've done it in a video because typically I'm doing like a wig or something and not using the doll's hair. Now this doll has bangs and the picture of Mary doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of, I started trying to use this little small paintbrush to see if I could curl it around that, and that didn't work. So what I did is sort of just trying to push it up so that when it goes into the boiling water, what it's going to train it to do is to just sort of stay sticking straight up instead of sticking down on her forehead. So that was my goal here. Also, I don't know why, I must have missed another video piece in here, but one of the things I did to her hair was I used some of my Copic permanent markers to color in some of the pink strands black because she had a few too many for the look that I wanted. And also the pink was a little too pink, so I used a purple marker to go over that to make them a little bit more purple. I don't know what happened to that. All right, so I'm not going to dip her yet because I have to leave the hair and the epoxy overnight. So that's a process. I want to get these two parts done on Saturday night, and then I'll have Sunday to work on taking the hair down and painting and doing the face and all that stuff. So I'm moving from the hair over to working with the epoxy. we're gonna try to make her body a little bit chunkier so that she looks more like the character in the movie. And to do this, I'm using epoxy sculpt, which apparently mine has dried up a little bit. It's kind of hard to get it out. And I think the last time I used it was when I made the ears for the fairy doll or the elf doll. But anyway, I managed to get out 2 chunks. You try to get about the same amount. And that looks pretty good. And then you just squish them together. And it says to work them together for about 5 minutes. I probably didn't work it quite that long, but they looked like it was pretty well mixed up. So I went ahead and did it. It's a small piece too. It's not that big a piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece and just wrap it around her body like a corset. And the thing you want to work on here is not getting it into her armpit or her hip joint, because you don't want to mess up the movement of the arms and the leg ball joints at the hips and the shoulders. So I'm trying to put it around her body, but at the same time, keep it away from the armpits and the top of the thighs on either side. And then I took a smaller strip and sort of put it a little bit lower on that area to be more like the abdomen that would be sticking out. And I was also able to kind of get rid of some of that curvature of the spine that these dolls have. So this doll will probably be a little bit easier to make clothes for. And I gave her a little bit bigger bosom as she does. And then I just put a strip down that middle part on the back for her bottom to make that stand out just a little bit more. Obviously this isn't realistic, but it'll be under clothes, so it really won't matter. Now this stuff, if you put water on it, works really well to smooth it out. So I have this little spray bottle with water in it, and I use it for a lot of different things. So I just sprayed it on there, and then I'm just using my fingers to sort of smooth it out. Like I said, this isn't going to show. It's just going to be there to help us make the dress and to make her look a little bit more like the real character in the movie. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it'll help. It'll help a little bit. So I'm smoothing it up at the top. I am going to end up painting this. I'm not sure how much this will show with the costume, but I'm really trying to smooth that down. And I did that in the front and the back. Now I ran my hot water until it was very, very hot, so I didn't have to spend so much time in the microwave. And then I got a deep bowl that I knew would be deep enough for me to dip the whole head of the doll in and cover all the hair. And filled it up pretty close to the top, so I made sure. And put into the microwave. And I put it on 3 minutes at first, and I ended up having to run it another minute because you really want it to be boiling. You want to see the bubbles in it. So be really careful with this. Make sure you use a towel or something to take it out. Now you'll see when I put it into there, it actually is boiling around the hair. And you'll also see that my purple and my black dye started coming out of the hair. Yeah, so that's really not exactly a permanent marker. It's, I guess, permanent unless you put boiling water on it. And I just made sure that, it was soaked all the way through those curls. And then I took it out and I put it in this bowl. And right away I washed that purple liquid out of that bowl, and I put a paper towel under her head so it wouldn't stain the white of my bowls. So make sure you do that, because that will stain those. All right, so we got her hair boiled. We got the body pretty much molded. Now I want to go ahead and do the mouth because, like I said, I have to leave the epoxy on overnight. And this is the defining look for her, is that crooked mouth that she makes all the time in the movie. So this will be something that really helps identify her, just like the buck teeth do for the Bette Midler doll. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to basically just cut off the bottom lip with my X-Acto knife. Just be careful doing this because they were really sharp, although this one has kind of gotten dull from where I carve my Blythe dolls all the time. But I'm leaving the top lip because if you look at the picture that I'm sort of going by, the top lip is pretty much looks like it's in the normal position, other than it coming down on the one side. And we'll be able to use the epoxy sculpt to sort of fake that with this. So I'm just trying to be really careful and not cut off her upper lip too, because that's what happens with me in X-Acto knives. I tend to go a little bit too far, and then somebody's nose is missing or something. So I cut up to where I think is the crease in the lips, and now I'm just trying to cut down through the crease to get that bottom lip off. So I finally pretty much got it off. There's still a couple of rough edges that are sticking up, and I don't want to have those. I want that to be pretty smooth going down to the chin. So when I put the epoxy sculpt on it, I don't have to worry about that sticking through, because it's really going to be a very small piece. The lip it's not that big, and if you're not careful, if you have something underneath it that's sort of poking out, then when you're manipulating it and trying to mold it into the shape you want, that's going to poke through. And I had that problem with the fairy doll ears. I was trying to make the ears smaller and kind of shape them, sort of hollowed out, but then I kept going down into the real ear of the doll. So I knew that, that's a possibility, and that's why I was trying to get this as smooth as I can. And honestly, this blade on this X-Acto was really not that sharp. So as you can see, I'm sort of working slow, pulling off one little piece at a time just to make sure I don't make a mistake and also don't cut myself. And I hope you guys all had a happy St. Patrick's Day. While I'm slowly doing this, I do want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, and hope you got your green beer or your green whiskey or whatever you drink. But all I had was basically my nails. I do have a necklace on that's green, but other than that, I didn't have actually anything green on today. So we're going to take a little blob of this epoxy sculpt that was left over from doing the body, and I'm trying really hard not to press on the body because it's still malleable, and somehow I've got a hair in that piece. But this stuff it says 1 to 3 hours to work it. I'd say you got a good hour for it to be really, easy to work with. Anyway, but definitely for 3 hours you could still press into it, and it would probably, move the mold around that you've been working on. So I'm just putting that across where the bottom lip is. I do want to be able to extend the side of the top lip, so I did have to sort of fold that up a little bit later, but I'm just going to pull you in a little bit closer here where you can see, because this is really different from anything that we've done on my channel. I'm sure other people have done it, but one of the things that I want to do is be able to, make these facial features a little bit more authentic so that we can really get the character of the doll. So I'm just pressing that epoxy down into the crease of the lip there. And after I worked with the ball tool for a while, I needed to go and get all my other my clay tools that I used, because that was not really giving me the look that I wanted. So I had to take a little break and go find all my polymer clay tools that I use that would be a little bit smoother. And I got all these little black hairs everywhere. They're getting into everything from where I trimmed the hair off of the top of the curls. So I'm basically just trying to smooth it down right now. I'm going really slow on the video to let you guys see it, because I know this is something different and some of you are going to be following along. And this really wasn't easy, I have to say. I messed with it a lot, even off camera. After I got it to where I thought it was where I wanted it, then I turned the camera off and I kept looking. I was like, no, that's not right. And then I would go back and I would keep messing with it. And usually when I do that, I really mess it up. So this is where I took the break, because I had that one tool, but it had some goop on it. So I had to clean the goop off, and then came back and I had all my tools. Now, this one I'm using right here, this is my favorite tool. It has this sort of pointy thing on one end, and then the other end is sort of a rounded, curved point shaper. See the curve? This is the best clay tool, shaping tool there is. It just does so many things. If you can only afford one tool, this is the tool to get. And I've had it for many, many years, at least probably 15, maybe 20 years. Still haven't lost it yet, which is great. Now I want to try to get rid of some of this epoxy because it's too much, and I want to get down to the actual shape of the lip. So I'm sort of pressing on the outside where I think I will not need it, and then I'm going to pull that part off. So that's kind of the shape of the lip. Now you can see at this point I realize I'm going to have to move some of that up because I want to pull a diagonal down from the top lip. So I pulled some of that up, put some water on it. Water is your friend when you're doing this because it can start to get a little bit stiff, and if you put the water on it, it comes right back to where you can work with it. It also makes it to where you can smooth it a lot. So I'm trying to get rid of that excess on the bottom. So I'm sort of coming around and pressing on the outside edge so I can pull off what I'm not gonna use. Now another way probably I could have done this is to like roll this out into a rope and then put that down in the shape of the lip, like just sort of curved it around, which might have been even easier, but now this is how I started. So anyway, you could probably do that if you could see it's sort of just like a J shape there, that you could have rolled it out and then formed that around the lip. And so basically now I've got the shape, I've got the excess cut off, and I'm just going to work on smoothing it with the water, keeping the hairs out of it, which keep getting in it for some reason, and making it sort of droop down on that one side, which as you're looking at it, it's the left side. For the doll, it's her right side. It's going to mimic the picture, so if you're looking at the picture that I had, it's kind of like that, and it helps to have that picture to look at. If you start doing this, I would advise printing that off so you have that to look at. That really, it does help because you start shaping it and you think you've got it right, and and you look at the picture and you're like, yeah, it really doesn't look like that. The other thing that was hard, I thought, visually, was that you're making this part of her mouth, but the upper lip is the color of her skin, and then this other piece, the lower lip, is this gray color of the epoxy. And it's very disconcerting to try to get the whole shape in your head when they're different colors. I've found that to be true. You may not have that problem, but I do. So I was really thinking I would be excited when I did, when I painted it and everything was one color, and I would really be able to see, how this looked, because it was a little bit hard to imagine. The part that was the hardest was the droopy part, of course. The other part wasn't that hard. But I kept thinking, oh, it looks like a clown's mouth, like how they'll do like the big lips or whatever. But I think the secret here is if you can just get it in the basic shape, once you get it hard, you can sand it, after you let it sit overnight. So don't worry that you've got to get it exactly perfect. Even on her body, although it's not going to show, there were places where it was more lumpy or whatever. But I knew I could even carve it with the X-Acto once it's hard, or use some, one of my sanding blocks. So you just basically, you want to try to get the shape. You definitely want to try to get the crease between the lips, because that's hard to get to with sandpaper. Even with an X-Acto, because of the shape. It's sort of that rounded shape on one side. And X-Acto is a straight line. So I found, like, even when I was going back in with the X-Acto knife, that it wanted to catch other areas of the lip and put a crease there. So you just have to go slow and take your time. It's kind of frustrating at times, but like I said, you just want to try to get it in that basic shape, and then you can kind of work with it a little bit more without worrying about it coming apart, once it's hard. This stuff gets hard like a rock. I mean, I guess it's not hard as a rock. If you hit it against something, it would sound like a rock, but you can carve it with the X-Acto and stuff. It's not so hard that you can't cut it with something, and it's not that hard. So what I'm trying to do now is make it look like it's a natural place where her lips come together on that side, her left side, your right side, if you're looking at the screen. And then the other thing is that I want to get that excess clay smoothed down against her face, so I don't have to do too much to that. I don't want it to look like a big lump, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just constantly going in and trying to get the angle right and get the lips so they're not sticking out so far that they look clownish. So I've kind of pressed it down there a little bit with my finger, and at one point I was going to try to put a little crease there because you can kind of see that on her face, but after I did it I thought, oh, it's stupid, so I just ended up smoothing it out. And I smoothed it out against the face as best I could so that when it dried it wouldn't be that hard to sand it down. And if you got any little nicks in the skin from using the X-Acto knife, in the real skin, the rubber skin, you can sand that a little bit too. So I did have one little nick that I was not happy with, but I was able to sand that down pretty much. And if that starts getting dry, like I said, put some water on it, and you'll be able to smooth it pretty good. So now I kind of got rid of that crease, you can see, and I'm just working on that side of the face to get the right angle and the right sort of droop to it. All right, so this is the next day. It's dried. I know it looks weird, doesn't it? It was one color, the upper lip one color. And I took the dowels out of the hair last night because they were retaining moisture from when we soaked them, and it wasn't going to let the hair dry. So I just sort of eased them out of the curl, but left it curled up so that it would dry. Now putting the hot water on it is what curled the hair. So even though, I pulled that out, that really didn't affect it. It was the hot water sort of set it like a permanent. And if you have a doll that's got really messed up frizzy hair, you put it in there, and then when you take it out, put it like on a plate and immediately brush it. It'll straighten it. I'm sure a lot of you have done that process, especially if you have children and they've got a Barbie and its hair's been messed with a lot and you've had to deal with that. That's a real easy way to sort of give it a new look. Just dip it in boiling water, and then like this, this is going to be nice and curly for our updo. It's actually almost too thick. I may have to thin it out some, but I'm just taking the rat tail of this comb and I'm poking it out. Now, you remember me telling you about the bangs, and I was worried about them because I couldn't get them to curl? Well, I held the hair dryer up close to it when I was trying to dry the hair, and it melted it. So you don't have to worry about those bangs anymore. They're gone. They're just a little bitty frizz up there. So right now I'm just going to get this out of the way because, like I said, I'm not going to do the hair till we finish the costume. So I'm just going to take a pipe cleaner, my handy dandy pipe cleaners, and wrap it around the hair to keep it out of the way, because we're going to have to paint the face, the whole face. I guess you could just try to paint the lip part, and that's acceptable if you want to do that, because when you paint it, it makes it so that you have to paint the features in. You can't use watercolor pencils or pastels. So what I did is sanded down and carved down some of these areas, and I just wanted to show you that you can carve it. It's not super, super hard. So there's just a few little bulges that I wanted to get rid of. So I wanted to make sure that, her legs could work and everything. So where there was a real protrusion, I would carve it off. If it's just something that I wanted to smooth over, then I would use sandpaper. So I wouldn't try to carve too much, because once you start doing it, it's like if I ever started trying to do a lot of it, then I'd mess it up. So I'm using these two kinds of sandpaper. The gray one is that superfine Scotch, and this orange one is I got a bulk supply of these from Amazon, and they're a coarser grain, so they're gonna really knock down the ridges really fast. And then I'll go back with that gray one that's superfine and use that around the edges, and use that to get really smoother areas. I'm not really worried about this being exactly smooth, but I did want it to make sure I had the shape, and that there weren't any real bulges that would, stick out of the clothes. So I'm happy with how it turned out. It gave her a little bit chunkier look, and you're not going to see her legs or really her arms. And that's why I'm also not that concerned about painting her, because the paint color is not going to be exactly the same color. So I'm using a brown, sort of reddish brown color, some yellow, some red, and some white. And I came up with this tan look. It's a little bit peachier than her plastic skin, but it's okay. Like I said, I am going to paint the neck and the chest and the face, so that part will all match. And then you're really not going to see her legs or feet. You might see her hands, but that'll be okay. They'll be far enough away that it won't look that different. So I'm just painting this on. I guess, definitely you could use an airbrush, and it would be smoother if you wanted to do that. I really didn't want to do that. So I'm just going to use a brush. And I think I ended up putting 2, maybe 3 coats. I think I put 3 coats, yeah. And I had to, go around on the back of the head, because with her hair up, you're going to see that part too. Just try not to get it too much up where the neck joint fits the head, because then it'll keep the head from moving around. So I'm just going to go to the edge of the head where it goes down to the neck, and then same on the neck going up just right at the edge. I'm also going to paint the body. Like I said, it's not really going to show other than maybe up at the top a little bit, but I just wanted it to look, more like it's all part of one piece. As I'm working on it, it just makes it easier to visualize her as a little person. It definitely is helping that lip. It's already starting to look more realistic, like it's actually a facial feature. So I'm actually happy with how that turned out. You can see the gray's kind of coming through, so I did have to put 3 coats on, and then I put some of the matte medium on her, because I wanted to have a nice surface to be able to paint on. I'm sorry, I put the matte varnish, not the matte medium. But the matte varnish from Liquitex actually looks glossy, as you can tell. So what I plan to do is, once I get her painted, I'm going to put some Mr. Super Clear on her, and hopefully that'll matte her down a little bit. So the first thing I do is paint her lips that red color as it is in the picture. I'm going to paint the inside, the crease between the lips red, but I'm going to come back in and make that darker with some brown, so it's more realistic, like, the shadow of the inside of the mouth, it would be darker. Make it look more realistic. Can't really see her teeth, so I'm not really worried about that. Thank goodness, because I really hate trying to draw teeth. All right, so we got our little quirky mouth. I think that's going to end up looking pretty good. So like I said, the thing with this is that if you did end up painting it, you're going to have to end up painting all the features and any of the shading that you do, because pastels and the watercolor pencils didn't stick to it. So, but that's okay. We're learning new techniques. It's an adventure, right? So I did find my little tiny paintbrushes, thank goodness, because I really have difficulty. I think I've told you this before, like, I really have difficulties with my hand stability. I think it's due to my arthritis. I have a really hard time painting small things and staying in the lines or making the right shapes. And I have had surgery on both of my hands for the arthritis. If you've been with me a while, you've been through those surgeries with me, so you know. But I just, painting, any kind of like detail work like this it's really hard for me. I know what I want to do, and I tell my hand what I want it to do, and it just goes in the opposite direction. So I'm putting down the white first for the eye, because with the paint, you can just put that over the whole eye, and then we'll come back in and put the iris on top of it. When we do it with the watercolor pencils, we usually just do the iris first and then put the white around it. I ended up putting about 3 coats to get a really good white opaque color here that didn't have the underneath part showing through, and you didn't really see the strokes of the brush. Like when you put the first coat down, when it's not covering it completely, you can really see the strokes of the brush. And that was true on her skin also. So just make sure that, you put enough coats that nothing is showing through from underneath, like the gray from the epoxy or any brush strokes. Now, having the matte varnish on it helped smooth it down some, and then also when I put the Mr. Super Clear on at the end, that's gonna help with some of the brush strokes that you still see. But and if you just used the epoxy for the lip part and you're just going to use the normal technique, then you can use the watercolors. Now the biggest thing other than her lips is her eyes. You notice they're really big and round, and you can see the white around the irises. So that's the look that we want. That's a look of shock or surprise when your eyes are wide open and you can see the white of the conjunctiva around the iris. So that's one of her other features in this picture that I really want to try to accomplish, and that means I have to make a really, really tiny brown circle in the middle of this white. Woo! But the thing is, with paint, if you mess up, you can always go over it, or you can wipe it off with water, because this is acrylic paint. So that's one good thing. So like when I was doing the irises, if I made a mistake and got it too big, I could go back with the white around the edge, and and I actually did have to do that. Now her brows are really bushy near the nose, and they come down close to the eye, and then they sort of arch up and sort of thin out around the arch. So I put down some strokes in brown color first. I'm going to go back in and put some black in and thicken them up a little bit in a minute, but I wanted to have that brown color down as the base. And putting another coat of the white down. I'm using this little teeny tiny brush. It's got like 3 bristles, I think. And I'm taking brown and just poking it up into her nostrils to define the nostrils. Normally do that with a pencil. Then I'm going to take that same little brush with some brown and go into the crease of her lips, because I want that to look darker. It's like the inside of her mouth, so it would be shadowed. But like I said, if you get it too brown, you can always go back and put red over it. That's the nice thing with paints. I really love oil paints, not for dolls, but for painting pictures, because the oil stays wet, wet for a while. So you can go back and shade and, mix things together, and it's really nice to work with. I always liked working with oils. So now I'm going to take that black paint and go around and do the outside of the eye. This is the part I was really dreading. I'm like, I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make the black go into the white. I know I am. But ended up being okay. The thing is, your hand, as it moves, because of your, where it's positioned or whatever, it has a tendency to curve in a certain direction. So it's easier on the other side to turn the doll upside down so you get your hand making the same natural motion. If you try to do that with the doll right side up, it tends to kind of curve the other way. So that part went pretty well. Got the outline done. Didn't make too big a mistake. So now we're going to do that iris. And just looking at the picture again to make sure I get it right. But we want to get that, hope that's small, small enough that the white shows around it. And we're just going to use brown and just make a solid circle, a little bit off center. Like she's looking a little bit off center. Now, on this particular eye, I did get it too big, and I did go back later and draw some white around the outside. It was funny because I got this one, it was a little bit too big, and then the other one, I got the right size, it was smaller. And when you looked at them side by side, it was like really wonky looking with one eye bigger than the other one. One eye was surprised and one eye wasn't surprised. So after we do the brown, then we can go in and do the pupil. Now, if you're not good at doing little tiny pupils with a brush, you could do, use a point tool. You could go in and just stick your point tool in the black and then put it in the middle of the brown. So I'm going back in with the black on the eyebrows to make them a little bit bushier and closer together. Her eyes are kind of close together, and the only way that I could try to do that a little bit is that I did put a little bit of shadow, and the way you do that with paint is you get like almost all, like you dip your brush in the paint, and then you just get it to where it's almost dry, and then you can put it on, and it doesn't, put down a huge amount of paint. It just sort of almost is like a shadow. Right now I'm mixing some white and some brown, and that's going to be sort of I don't know if it's eyeliner, eyeshadow, or just the shadow of her overhanging lid. But if you look at her picture, there's this brown above the edge of the eyelid on the top and about halfway over on the bottom from the outside. So that's what I'm going to do now, is put this sort of, I'm going to say it's eyeshadow, because whether it's cosmetic eyeshadow or natural eyeshadow, it's eyeshadow. So we're just going to put this light brown color, put it all the way across on the top, and then about halfway across on the bottom. I'll go back in, and put a little bit darker eyeliner on too. I realized I didn't put lashes on Sarah, and I meant to do that in her video, but that video got so long, it's probably why I was just like, I'm done, I can't do any more. So I think what we'll do is we'll just wait until we get all 3 of the dolls made, and we'll just lash them all at one time. It'll be just like a day from hell for me, but we'll do that because I think it makes them look really good. And you guys want to see some more lash applications, I understand. So I hope I don't forget that part. I'll probably get so excited to be done. I'll be like, no more lashes. But I think all of them will look better with lashes, more realistic. So I'm just making that brown shadow a little bit more. Now you can see that eye on the right, you can see how up at the top it runs right into the eyelid or the eyeliner, whereas the one on the left, you can see the white at the top of the iris. So I went back in with some white there and made that one smaller, so she's like, ah. Also did a little bit of shading around on her face. So now we're just going to take the pointy tool, Mr. Pointy Tool, which we always use, pretty much always, to give her the little white dot sparkle in the eye. And she looks pretty surprised. What? I like how that turned out. I think it turned out pretty good. I hope yours does too. Alright, so there she is. I did put some Mr. Super Clear on her, outside of course, with my gas mask on. And now the only thing left to do is to put a little bit of high gloss varnish on her eyes and lips. This is Liquitex product also. And I'm just using my little small brush so I don't get outside of the area that I'm working on. But with the Mr. Super Clear on, that sealed that paint because it's watercolor, and if you didn't and you start putting this liquid on, it would make it run. It would liquefy it. So make sure you put some kind of coating down, whatever your choice is. I like that Mr. Super Clear matte setup. You can see she's much more matte now. I did her body as well, so that helps a lot with the way she looks. So I did put a couple of coats of that high gloss varnish on. That'll give her eyes and lips a more natural shine. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is our first look at Mary. We're going to work on her costume next. And I love making her head go different. And then we'll finish her hair once we get the costume made. Alright, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That always helps. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thanks, and bye.